Just like the 88-year-old woman who woke up inside her own coffin after being declared dead, Elon's not done yet. He's still rebooting the social order. Democracy, the Constitution, and the rule of law, they're still being liquidated. Realize the factions of this administration are working together, even though it seems fractured. By the end of this, I'm going to tell you why martial law is so important right now. Back when I was a store leader at Tesla, I was constantly preventing and solving problems. And one of the things that kept me inspired was first principles thinking. Elon talked about it all the time. You break down problems to their fundamental truths and then you build from there. This principle is in opposition to what most people do, which is to not reinvent the wheel. The wheel that Elon is working on right now is the US, and he's using his algorithm to do it. This is his 5 step problem solving process, and we're already on about step 3. What's happening in LA right now is a part of the process. And if you think I'm exaggerating, I want you to listen through step 1. Musk's algorithm has 5 steps. The first is to make the requirements less dumb. Question every rule, especially the ones from smart people and people with experience. He thinks requirements are naturally dumb and it doesn't matter where it came from. The next part is to delete part of the process, cut steps, parts, or features, force the process to prove it needs to exist. And if nothing is removed, that's a red flag. There's always something unnecessary. If you're not adding things back in, then you haven't deleted enough. And that should make everything that happened with Doge much clearer. Now it's time to simplify or optimize. This happens only once you're sure the process is absolutely necessary. You should understand that most people would go into a system and try and optimize it. Not Elon. He has to wreck it first, and then he optimizes. Then he speeds things up by tightening the loops and shortening the timelines. The process goes faster only after it's been cleaned up. Finally, he automates. He doesn't automate something that he considers to be flawed. It only comes after the process has been stripped, simplified, and sped up manually. His algorithm is rooted in first principles thinking. It challenges the impulse to just make things faster or more high tech. It strips down things to their basics. If you worked at Tesla, an example of this is when he created his own CRM. It was a full year of chaos before things felt like they actually worked. So, how is he applying all this to the US? Well, it's been in our faces for a while, but I don't think we've been paying attention. By the way, I'm Kina. I talk about current events through a perspective that you might not have considered. It'd be great if you shared this video with someone if you find it to be interesting. The first step in Musk's framework is to figure out the rules and determine whether those rules make sense. In a democracy, that sounds noble, almost reformist, but the way it's being applied now isn't about making democracy better. It's about making it look dumb enough to discard. Elections are rituals that produce mediocre leaders. Congress is performative. They're more interested in sound bites than solutions. Public debate is inefficient and it's manipulated by media elites. Does all of that sound familiar? We saw this step play out through a steady campaign to undermine the legitimacy of our public institutions. Elections are called rigged. Congress is labeled a circus. Debate is reduced to culture war slogans that offer emotion but not solutions. Woke mind virus, deep state, liberal elites. Remember when Elon bought Twitter back in 2022? It didn't make one bit of sense. He paid way too much for it and damaged his reputation. Looking back, it makes total sense. It was a deliberate step towards redefining public discourse. And while I don't think it was the start of step 1, it did play a big part in getting us to where we are right now. It's the perfect platform to amplify these narratives by reinstating banned accounts through gutting moderation and reframing public discourse as something that's corrupted with bias. Doing this, he helped turn skepticism into default thinking, all the while claiming absolute free speech. Also, this is when Republicans started significantly gaining followers on Twitter, while at the same time, the Democrats started losing followers. As always, my references are linked in the video description. This was the clearest sign about the direction that he was headed. Once people start to believe the system is broken, it's not a huge leap to say, well, maybe it shouldn't exist in its current form at all. How do you make sure as many people as possible think the system is broken? Take over communication. We are long past the days of buying TV networks. In this day and age, you buy social media. Now that we've undermined democratic norms, that's when we get to step 2. If the rules are dumb, delete them. That's the logic. So Doge. But In this context, the part being deleted isn't some faulty wire in a machine, it's oversight, checks and balances. It's entire chunks of government meant to slow things down in the name of fairness and accountability. Many of us see what he did with Doge as a robbery and a mess. Regulatory bodies were gutted, ethics offices were emptied, programs that helped Americans live life were stripped so they collapse on their own. That's not because he doesn't understand what government does. It's because this was a part of the process. If parts are not being added back into the design at least 10% of the time, not enough parts are being deleted. They're deleting parts of our democracy and they're not subtle about it. This is a strip down of federal agencies. We are watching in real time as they prove they need to exist. We're here now. Musk left Doge, so he's done right. No, he's just getting started. He's installed many dark enlightenment loyalists into the government who are optimizing what is left. The goal is a tight, efficient ruling structure, like a corporate executive suite. They want to run the government like a startup. Startups don't do checks and balances, they do founder control, they do pivot or perish. They don't worry about making sure everyone gets a voice. They worry about hitting their next funding milestone. That's the logic that's crept into our politics. We're being sold the idea that deliberation is weakness and centralization is strength. That one smart guy can do what the entire Congress can't. Just pick the smartest guy and let him run things. We've already replaced public conversations with algorithmic feeds. Now there's talk of replacing public services with private platforms, AI to determine who gets healthcare. And if you don't believe this, read an open letter to open minded progressives. I've linked it in the video description. If you're tight for time, read or listen to Curtis Yarvin's Plot Against America, which is also linked. And if that's still too much, Thursday I'm going to break down an open letter to open minded progressives if you need a bit of sugar to help the medicine go down. So make sure you're subscribed so you can see that. The faster it moves, the harder it is to stop. This step is about breaking the cadence of governance. It's rapid implementation of policies, limited oversight, and no due process. Musk has left Doge, but his fingerprints are everywhere. So the acceleration can start without him. His departure isn't a retreat, it's a handoff. He's set the tempo, and the people he's installed are now in position to carry it out without the drag of having public accountability. Think of it as founder syndrome, but applied to governance. Build the framework, get out of the way, and let the loyal operatives run it at scale. So, what could that look like? Don't be surprised if decision making gets increasingly automated or routed through private tech. Congressional process, oversight hearings, expert reviews, these are all kinds of legacy systems that slow things down. The next phase may involve reclassifying entire categories of government work as executive or emergency functions, cutting procedural friction under the guise of responsiveness. Internal government tools could quietly shift toward predictive modeling and algorithmic governance. It'll accelerate decisions while removing human oversight from the loop. Why do you think Grok and Palantir are so important? Personally, I'm not a fan of books and movies like Lord of the Rings. They do something bad to my soul. I don't like it. Anyway, Musk's playbook always includes shaping public perception in real time. Through Twitter, the public narrative will be curated to match the pace of policy changes. Whatever doesn't serve the story is going to be drowned out, reframed, and buried under a flood of new headlines. I mean, look at the story coming out of New York. Nobody's talking about it. To move this quickly, you need a reason. Expect rhetorical and real crises to play a role. National security threats, economic instability, election chaos, Los Angeles riots. These moments will justify faster, less transparent decisions, all made in the name of protecting the system while quietly rewriting it. We've already seen bits of these. In startup terms, we're now in the growth hacking phase. Burn through the old model, scale the new one as fast as possible, and hope that the user base doesn't churn before it's too late to reverse things. So far, none of the user base has churned. Apart from LA, they are rejecting people being grabbed off the streets. These protests are being framed as riots. They are not. They are confined. They are people demanding not to be stolen. If you see a brick thrown or a car burning, you don't know who activated it. All you see is that it was done. This protest is an opportunity to drive that narrative. The more people get disoriented, the more they might welcome someone promising clarity, speed, and order. And that's when step five becomes almost automatic. This is about replacing slow human driven systems with tech that runs itself and answers to almost no one. This is the quiet phase, the code rewrite for how governance happens. Expect to see artificial intelligence increasingly embedded into agencies as efficiency tools, scoring applicants for government aid or flagging risky speech, prioritizing law enforcement resources. Once it's in the system, it's hard to remove. It's even harder to audit. The decisions, they feel automatic, neutral, but someone wrote the rules to follow. The more trust is eroded in public institutions, the more plausible it sounds to let tech companies take over. Musk and Teal aligned firms, they're already in position. Platforms like Twitter aren't just social networks, they're parallel information systems. Musk has called it a global town square, but what happens when that square replaces civic processes altogether? One of the quietest forms of automation is behavioral. If you can nudge people into certain actions, what to click, who to trust, what to fear, you don't need to enforce control top down. You just let the system optimize for it. With enough repetition, people start to internalize the priorities of the system itself. After working at Tesla for 6 years, I know this to be absolutely true. It's the reason why I was able to convince so many people that their panel gaps were normal. I even told my husband that the panel gaps on our car were normal. Then they were fixed when we got the car wrapped. Once the system can self-reinforce, you don't need coups. You don't need martial law. You just need permanent instability, which justifies a constant state of urgent decision making. That instability can be real or manufactured. At that point, democracy isn't abolished, it's just archived. Musk doesn't need to be in office to make this happen. He just needs the machine to keep running with the right logic embedded. And if no one pulls the emergency brake, that logic starts to feel normal. It becomes automated. It feels inevitable. And all of this is because the right want power, 47 wants money, and the tech bros want control. Or these riots could be a distraction from what is happening in New York and the investigation into the 2024 election results. I'm just saying, the data on this case is really strange. I've linked the court documents in the description. It's hard to fight these billionaires. That's why I talk so much about being intentional when spending money. It's not that we should avoid spending, rather, we should avoid spending with them. I do hope that I'm wrong about all of this and that we're just watching the crash out of a middle aged ketamine user who's been playing with the US like it's a toy. I do find it strange that 47 hasn't fought back with his usual intensity. I mean, we've seen him do vicious takedowns for far less. I also find Vance's response to this very interesting. Has no one considered it strange that he got into politics in 2022 and that he's a heartbeat away from the presidency? Only 3 years ago, he was sworn in as a senator. Who fast tracks like that?